Welcome to Just an Hour, Engaging with Ideas. Today we have a really fun episode, I think, of, well, I don't know, it's not an episode. Do we call these episodes? Anyway, all right, it is an episode now. A session with around the Learning Engineering Institute. We have some guests who are not really guests because they're very close friends of ours. But, Just an Hour is just something that Betty and I and Gustavo, the associate deans, try to create a space for informal conversations around ideas. And this is now we're reaching, this is going to be the last but one. So we've been doing this for a year and a half now. And it's been awesome. So those of you who have been to these episodes before know how these work. Essentially, it's a very informal conversation around ideas and things related to academia and so on. So a couple of quick announcements. The first, if you haven't been to it, do visit the My Education Hub. A lot of information relevant to faculty and so on are available there. Really good information. And I'd really want to give a shout out to Derek for all the effort that has gone in to pull all that together. And please keep us informed about your work through the Scholarship Roundup survey. I will drop a link in the chat in a little bit. With that, jumping into today's topic, which is the Learning Engineering Institute. And learning engineering is an interdisciplinary field that combines principles from various domains, such as cognitive science, instructional design, data analysis, computer science, and educational technology to improve learning experiences and outcomes. And ASU's Learning Engineering Institute, which is just sort of kicking off, and I'll drop a link to the website as well, which I know a lot more content is going to come into that, but there is something there now. And it's informed by ASU's charter, the LEI. It seeks to build partnerships across communities of research and practice through multiple research methodologies, aiming to enhance the quality and impact of learning across ASU's diverse populations. So I'm really excited to have our guests today, Danielle McNamara, Scotty Craig, and Rod Roscoe. I'm not going to introduce them, but let me just say that over the past 2 years, I've gotten to know all of you really well, and it has actually been an absolute pleasure to get to work with all of you around learning engineering, around AI, around all kinds of different projects. It's almost like it is surprising to me that we hadn't worked together till today. But I think the connection between MLFTC and the LEI is very strong. And I really do want to thank Danielle for very early on reaching out to Betty and me and saying that this is an idea that's emerging and we want MLFTC to be a part of it. And I think it's been exciting to see all those different connections emerge. Scotty is a part of the the AI in education, LFC. So there's lots of different connections here that I think can only grow stronger as we go forward. But I should stop and let you guys talk about yourself. So why don't we start with just, instead of my giving an introduction, telling us a little bit about yourself and your research interests before we jump into the LEI business. So Danielle, I'm going to start with you, and then Scotty, and then Rod, if that's okay.
Sure.
Perfect.
So I'm Danielle McNamara. I've been here for about a decade. I came here in 2011. I'm mainly affiliated with psychology, but I also have an affiliation with Mary Lou Fulton. And we've been launching the Learning Engineering Institute for the past year. So I'm the executive director, and Scotty and Rod are directors. I'll let them tell you what they're directors of within the Institute. So a little bit about myself. I come from a rather multidisciplinary background in first teaching English as a second language in linguistics, and then I got a clinical psych degree, and then I got a degree in cognitive science. And I've been spending my career mainly focused on building tutoring systems and multiple aspects of tutoring systems, and also investigating strategies for students, mainly high school and early college, to help them develop strategies to understand, to comprehend challenging texts, and also to write And so within that context, I've also been investigating natural language processing and developing natural language processing tools for researchers and educators. And along the way, we in working with my team, we have been primarily using learning engineering techniques. And so that has kind of evolved and grown such that this learning engineering domain or area or field of study has been emerging. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is the efforts that we've been going through to launch this institute, I'll shut up now so that we can talk about that in a second. So Scotty.
Hello, everybody. Scotty Craig. I'm in the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering, but I'm also an affiliate of the Mary Lou Fulton Schools of Engineering. So I always say I have a foot in both schools, kind of bringing the Fultons back together. My training is also as a cognitive psychologist. So I actually have an interesting experience in the area of engineering, in some areas of engineering, especially in systems thinking. Cognitive psychology as it applies to higher level areas such as learning specifically, and in educational theory and areas of the learning sciences. So it was kind of natural for me. A lot of times I was kind of looking around trying to find my field. And when I started to find and hear more about this area of learning engineering, it was exciting to me because it started to pull together, even more so than some other areas, a lot of the areas that I do work in. So my primary research that I've been doing over the years has varied, and I've gone in many different areas because I get interested and I kind of like grab it and chase it for a while. But a lot of the stuff primarily has been looking at how people interact in technology-based environments. And a lot of it is multimedia-based environments and virtual environments, and especially how these things such as virtual humans and virtual characters can influence that learning engagement. And a lot of times, people are like, well, it's like, how is this important? And especially back in early 2000, when people asked me that question, I'll be like, well, it's important for us to get it to be done now, but in 20 years, this will become really important. And now, unfortunately, or fortunately, we have these chatbots and everything everywhere that are popping up because of Gen AI. And I was like, I don't know if it was fortunate or unfortunate that I was right in the 20-year projection, but we'll see how that goes. So again, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I will turn it over to Rod. The last thing I will say is that I am now also the director of research and evaluation for the Learning Engineering Institute.
Thank you, Scotty. Happy to introduce myself. I'm Rod Roscoe. I'm also, like Scotty, in the Human Systems Engineering program in the Fulton Schools of Engineering, so bridging engineering and education. My background is also cognitive psychology, or maybe more accurately, educational psychology. I've always been fascinated in how people learn, those mechanisms and processes. And then over the years, I added in educational technology. So how does technology participate in either helping people learn or maybe sometimes not helping them learn? So the design, development, of testing of educational technology. And then most recently, learning about and thinking about equity in education. So what's the context of education and the impact on people? And so weaving all these things together, how we learn, how technology participates, and how that's equitable or not. So a lot of my sort of more recent work has been sort of just yammering on or scholarly pontificating on these sort of intersection of issues. And so that's what I'll be doing in my role as the Director of Inclusive Excellence for the LEI, is just continuing to think about and encouraging others to think about all of this stuff. One of the things I'm working on is a framework for equity in learning engineering, which I've called I-Elevate. Very proud of my acronym for Inclusive Excellence through Learning Engineering. And then thinking about variability, that's the V, assets, that's the A, transparency and empowerment. There's more to it, but yeah, I'm still in the process of crowdsourcing all this wisdom. But I think that's one thing I can contribute here to LE and LEI is how do we move forward at this stage in the most equitable, sort of like community service driven manner. So that's me.
Great, thanks so much. And again, thanks Rod, Scotty, and Danielle for being here. So Punya and I typically alternate asking questions. And so I'll jump in next. And Danielle, you started to touch on this, but maybe you and if Scotty and Rod want to add more to this question. So could you say a little bit more about how the Learning Engineering Institute at ASU came to be, you know, a little bit more about its origins and what you're doing now to build it?
Sure. So a couple of years ago, a call came out from IES, so that's the education department, for two things. One was transformative grants, and the other was for digital learning platform proposals. And I submitted two things to that. One was not funded, and actually two were not funded, but one was funded. And what those two were related to was how I was thinking at the time about how to advance learning sciences at scale, how to address the problem that so much of our research in learning sciences has advanced iteratively on advancing theories, but sometimes disparate theories. And also there's this kind of common complaint that the lab-based studies don't always scale, don't always generalize across populations. And so being at ASU, I decided to ask ASU if they wanted to become a digital learning platform, because there was this call for digital learning platforms to essentially release their data to researchers, create a platform. And so these were really addressed at commercial platforms that are serving learners. And so it was kind of written like that. You can think of like, I don't know how many of you know, like Mathia or the Cognitive Tutor, or there's like assessments, and there's various platforms that teachers K-12 use. And so the idea from Mark Schneider was, how can we make this connection and bridge the silos between these digital learning platforms and researchers and educators? And so, and my thought was, well, we sit on a wealth of data at a university that is dedicated to inclusion and not exclusion, to diversity and to the success of our students. But the data sit in different places across campus. And at the time, it was pretty much, you could get the data depending on who you knew and who liked you. And so, whether or not you could figure out which forms to fill out. So I asked ASU if they wanted to jump on board and create a research platform for researchers to provide researchers with the data that is generally behind closed doors. And they said yes. So we wrote the proposal and it was funded. So that's called the Learning at Scale project. I'll go ahead and type that in. I think that should work. learningatscale.asu.edu. And that really I viewed as the foundations of what we needed in order to be able to understand learning at ASU, and to also further this notion of learning sciences at scale. So I've also written this paper on learning sciences at scale, which pontificates about how we need to have large at scale experiments such that we can investigate the multiple theories of learning using more diverse data sets. And so this, the Learning at Scale project is a start to that, to get people from different theoretical perspectives to think about these questions with a large, access to large data sets. With just the notion from my perspective of that I'm never going to be able to ask all the questions that are relative. Like my theoretical perspective, I'll just keep hammering on one particular explanation, and I know that's not the right way to do it. And so that kind of leads us into learning engineering, which brings together at the core of learning engineering is that our approach to solving problems and taking advantage of opportunities revolves around putting together transdisciplinary cross-sectional teams that put stakeholders at the center and involve stakeholders from the beginning. So more human-centered approaches that are open to multiple theoretical viewpoints and approaches to those data, those problems, those opportunities. And so that as I was working with the university partners more and more, so working with enterprise technologies and Ed Plus and Learning Enterprise, one of the things that I recognized more and more was just the depth of expertise across all of these units at ASU. It's really just amazing. The kinds of people and effort that's going on at ASU that is aligned with the mission at ASU. I also found that I really liked them, so I like working with them, and so that's how it came to be that kind of put myself out there that I was willing to do this, and it had been tossed around for a while. And so basically, administration asked if we would like to create this institute, which is really revolving around how to enhance developing ways of investigating and also ways to enhance student well-being and success at ASU, with an eye toward the mission of ASU being toward success for all students who have the goal to learn and to succeed. And so here we are. We've been launching for about a year, and I feel like I've been talking for an hour. So I kind of went long on this answer, longer than I've ever gone before. So I'm going to be quiet now.
No, that was perfect. And I think, we have a few doc students here as well. And I think what's important to understand, I think, for doctoral students, because often what happens is you look at your dissertation as being the thing, and that's going to be everything. And what I think just in your story showed like how these things develop over time, and that there is a sort of a trajectory to this work, and that you have to be open to developing these partnerships, not entirely sure where they're going to go and end up. And I do appreciate that sort of giving us that background, because very often, you say, okay, here is the Learning Engineering Institute, as if it sort of appeared ab initio out of nothing. So I appreciate that. So I'm going to take the next question and twist it around a little bit and get Scotty and Rod's response to that, if that's okay. So so Danielle talked about sort of coming from the learning sciences and learning engineering. I'd love to get, because you come from slightly different backgrounds with cognitive psychology and educational psychology. So how does this learning engineering in your minds or in your articulation different from the learning sciences or different from educational psychology? Because I think that's a question many people ask, which is that, is it, the same idea, but in a different clothing? But I think that there is something that you're bringing through the word engineering in there, that changes how we articulate, how we implement, how we think. So either of you can go first. I'll ask Rod to go first because he and I share the ed psych background. So Rod, maybe you go first, and then we'll go to these cognitive types.
Sure. It might be a little bit controversial or not popular, but I am not super hung up on what we call things. So like there is debate about learning science versus learning engineering, and like, is it new? Is it not? Like, I don't know. I don't care. I guess I care a little bit. I'm concerned about how we learn and how we support that. What I do think that the learning engineering sort of like idea brings that's valuable. I mean, we don't own it, but I think it really it's this engineering, this very pragmatic, very data-driven, very problems and solutions-oriented approach. You hear about the learning engineering process a lot, which I like. The idea that being systematic about things and transparent and document. And so again, like other people talk about these things too, but I really like that flavor of learning engineering, that we sort of identify an actionable, testable idea, and we really go at it through like iterative design, iterative research, and then we just have these feedback loops to make things better. And so whatever you want to call that, I don't really care, but I like that process and I like that approach. I wasn't an engineer by training, but I guess I'm an engineer by enculturation now on that.
Thank you, Scotty.
Yeah, and just kind of to build on what Rob was saying, because it's true. It's like it's kind of whatever you want to call it. If you feel comfortable calling yourself a learning scientist, if you're doing learning engineering process and calling yourself a learning scientist, we're actually okay with that. And the reason why, and again, this is a question that we do get a lot, like, how is it not X? Educational psychology, learning sciences, whatever. And I think a lot of that does come from, if you allow me to just get philosophical just for a second, from a philosophy of science point of view, it comes from the idea of more of a paradigm perspective, and the fear of a paradigm shift. Thinking that like with learning sciences, that learning engineering or with instructional design, with either one of those, like learning engineering is going to come in and just take over and wipe out those and be the new dominant thing. But that's actually a false kind of misnomer of really how science works, and really in a false way of thinking how learning engineering thinks about what we do. We're much more of a research tradition in that, as Danielle said, we're open to a large family of theories. We are not as have as much of a hardcore as to this is how science must be done. This is how problems must be solved. We're much more pragmatic, and we do have a general kind of methodology ontology, but as Rod just actually articulated it very well, it is much more of a process based, and it leaves open for areas of educational psychology and learning sciences and instructional design, all to be part of that and to basically build and work as teams together to solve problems. And with the idea of being able to solve problems that we know are going to be firm solutions, that we have an idea of how much we can scale them. And if we need to scale them out large scale, or either scale them up or scale them out, up being larger instances or out being multiple instances of the same thing. And we would hopefully would know that by the end of the time we actually have our solutions and we have tested solutions with empirical data. Okay, there you go. That's my answer to that.
Danielle, do you want to add anything?
And now, while Scotty and Rod were talking, I was mostly reminiscing in my mind. And that was I'm reminiscing on how long I've known Scotty and Rod, because I was wondering if Scotty, I think you were there when I interviewed, so
I was on your hiring committee at Memphis.
that's what I was going to say.
Actually, I voted
I
to
was going
hire
to say,
you.
I think
In
Scotty
fact, I
was
voted 3
on
times to hire
my
you.
hiring committee in 2021, and he
2020.
was student representative.
In
And-
2001.
Oh, right. Sorry. 2001.
Yeah.
2001.
Yes.
So I met Scotty 22 years ago, and more than 22 years, 22 and a half years ago, almost 23 years.
Yeah.
And so I have known Scotty for a long time. And then I have known Rod since 2007 or 8. I hired him in 2008.
I think it was 9.
But
I
I
had met you previously.
yeah, I think it was official in 2008 though.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was at Vanderbilt for a couple of years.
Uh-huh. Anyway.
Yeah, because I thought it was January.
And then
January of 9 is what my memory of it.
And so Rod was a postdoc and came here with me and became a research scientist, and then became a faculty here. All to say, our roots are kind of grounded in this cognitive science, but from the perspective of developing intelligent systems. We were at Memphis in the Intelligent Institute for Intelligent Systems. And so this group was really grounded in bringing people together from across the university to build systems that would enhance, mainly for learning, although there were other intelligent systems being built as well. And so it's been really cool for me to be able to work with individuals that I just trust so implicitly, and it's really great to be able to bring that, that we've come together. And so that's what I was thinking about. Wow. Cool. Scotty and Rod were talking.
So seeing how young these two guys look, they must have been toddlers when they were.
Oh yeah, no, Scotty was like 5.
Betty, do you want to ask the next question?
Sure. So kind of back to the Learning Engineering Institute. You've talked a bit globally about the purpose and context. So why don't we shift a bit to talking about what the more specific goals of LEI, the Institute, are, maybe long-term, short-term, or immediate. I don't know, go back to you, Rod. Would you like to kick us off? What are some goals?
That's a good question. There are documents with like 1-year plans and 5-year plans, and Danielle and Tracy Arner think about those a lot. My goal is really to sort of like, as this evolves, we have the opportunity to be a leader here, I think, ASU, and to put that ASU stamp, that unique stamp, on learning engineering, because other people are doing it, but the scale at which we can do things, the infusion of the charter in the DNA of how we do things, I think is really important. And so, we pride ourselves on being the most innovative university, and we could also, maybe lay claim to or work towards the most inclusive university. And I think that's one of my goals, is that our flavor, our push, the way we're going to transform and own learning engineering is really serving learners. So not just, our own CVs and publications and grants, but generating solutions that are going to like really bring more people to the success they want in life. And I really think that ASU and like the Learning Engineering Institute is poised to do that with all of our resources and our sort of stance, our commitment to people and communities. That's my goals.
Nice, really nice. Yeah. Scotty, you want to add something to that?
Yeah. So I'll kind of add my bit as the director for research and evaluation, which is that the one thing that we can see is like there are a lot of things that are I don't want to say problems. There are a lot of opportunities that we have within higher education right now, challenges that we can actually come up with very interesting solutions to. And I think that, as Danielle alluded to earlier, at ASU, we have lots of groups of very just absolutely amazing and talented people that are spread out. And one thing I can see as a really amazing goal for the Institute is to start building these teams, which we've heard, these learning engineering teams that can come together and conduct the research and evaluation to actually have documented evidence of solutions. And I think is one of our primary goals. And I can kind of turn it over to Danielle, who can give probably expand on that.
Actually, thank you, Scotty, for bringing it up. So, Danielle, when you talk, can you talk a little bit about these leaps? Because I think that's been something that, I know a few of us at the Teachers College have been a part of, and I think you have plans for other ones as well. I think that could be very interesting to the people watching now and people who would watch it later.
Thanks, Punya. So LEAPs are Learning Engineering Action Pods. They are, if you can imagine, the typical kind of design-based iterative cycle. Please set the center of that an opportunity or a problem of interest or something, some kind of goal. And then around the edges, the team. So interdisciplinary, keeping in mind that we want to form transdisciplinary teams that are focused on including the stakeholders and so human-centered kind of focus. And so our main missions revolve around enhancing persistence and retention for students and facilitating the role of instructors. So helping instructors who need to deliver quality education at scale and pinpointing opportunities to increase retention and persistence for students. And so LEAPs are formed to bring those groups together around questions. And also they are kind of different in basically you can go on a walk and listen to what you have to study and then be able to come back to it and read it. So that's kind of an example of a LEAP. Another example that's larger and more comprehensive is the LEAP that we started last June on generative AI. So to bring together people from across the campus and across departments and across units to talk about and think about generative AI and how that might affect our university and learning and instructors. We've been meeting weekly on the generative AI lead. And our goal there is then now to start doing studies, empirical studies with instructors in classrooms to look at the how to integrate generative AI applications and tools into classrooms to investigate how to leverage it to students' advantage and also to facilitate that with faculty. So part of that has led to us facilitating and helping ET and developing the faculty course. And I'm assuming that pretty much everyone on this call has been given the link to the faculty course multiple times. And then also student courses. And then now to start looking at how to various opportunities for connecting with faculty and instructors on how to integrate generative AI. We'll be sometime soon releasing a call to help fund instructors and faculty who want to conduct research on this topic, as well as another focus on writing at scale. So working with faculty across multiple campuses to look at how to facilitate using generative AI in writing classes, but then also how to help faculty who want to use, have writing intensive classes, but don't have the resources to do so. So kind of a big scale problem. And then we're also doing projects like in the learning at scale domain. So for example, Rod has a project investigating the relations between math and English, and that's funded by a very small grant from Schmidt Futures. And then there's another many projects that we want to build out with learning at scale to kind of set the groundwork and help researchers to use the learning at scale database to better understand learning at ASU. So to do these, we have this huge database and we want to help faculty and researchers to leverage that database. And if it's related to learning and if it will advance our understanding of learning and things that we can do at ASU to enhance well-being and success, then that's something that we're working towards. So it's been building this database, this platform. It's been pretty hard. So we're working on it, and now we're just like pretty ready to.
So just listening to you, Danielle, makes me think that this might be a wonderful resource for some of our more quantitative methods kinds of courses, because students are always looking for projects that they can get some data. While the class is really about taking existing data and doing something interesting, asking some interesting questions of it. So this might be something that at some point I might want to connect you with some of our faculty who teach courses in that space. Mm-hmm. As something that they could use as projects with the students. So Rod, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, because when we think about scale, when we think about these data sets, we think very quantitatively. And sure, when you have like 30,000 data points, there's certain quantitative things that become more possible. But I think there's a lot of value in thinking mixed methods here too, in using those qualitative methods to understand sort of what those numbers mean and for whom. And so even if you have 36,000 people or whatever your data point is, I just think there's a lot of value in going in and looking at individual cases and understanding what sort of these numbers and trends mean, so that we don't just assume that the quantitative pattern speaks for itself. So anyway, I think that the learning at scale kind of data could go into qualitative methods class as well, and people could probably teach us a lot about how to make inferences at different levels and scale. One last thing I'll say is that we try to think about intersectional analyses, where we're looking at, sort of multiple demographic or identity data points. And it's amazing how quickly your large sample turns back into an N of 1 or 2 when you start thinking about individual people. And so you're right back at the qualitative need. So that's my sales pitch for all methodologies. Please come work with us.
So I have a question then as a follow-up. I mean, are there questions that you have, having now created this data set and being ready to release, that you would love to get somebody to take on and run with, so that you can sort of scaffold it for them? Because sometimes when you are sort of a beginning doctoral student or something, you might need a little bit of support. You have the energy, you have the passion, you have the commitment, but you might need a little bit of scaffold. And having a question already in place, might be just what they need. I don't know. I mean, is that something that you have thought about or considered?
We could. There's just so many questions. A really good exercise, I think, is for people to go to the Learning at Scale website and see the data dictionary that has been compiled, and it's growing. And they can see some of the flags and tags and data bits that are available to us. And I think that can be a really useful way of thinking about what's available and what kind of questions could you ask about that. Actually, Tracy ran this workshop at the Icicle conference, where we created little cards and we made a game out of it. You basically were dealt different data points and were asked to think about questions that would use those data points, whatever you were given. So sometimes a little silly, sometimes a little serious, but that's what I would suggest for students and other folks, is to go to the data dictionary and see what's available. And it's because sometimes I think that helps you to make things real, like, oh, we have a flag for origin, like national origins. We also have a flag for whether you, I think, are in a residence hall or not. And so you might not even realize that's something you could think about or ask about in these data.
Fascinating. So there was a question. Betty, do you want to take the next question? Do you want me to jump in? We are flexible.
Sure. No, I was just going to comment. I was just looking at the data there, and I too kind of assumed it was quantitative, but there's just data from discussion posts and other kinds of very qualitative data. So that's, I think, really important to stress.
Yeah, and I think that we should really, as a follow-up to this, connect with our methods faculty, because I know when they teach these classes, one of the struggle the students often have is like, where do I get data? Because the class is about methods, it's not about collecting data. So having at least an array of sources that they can go to, and this could be a very, very important one. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, so I would just jump in. I'm not quite sure of order of questions, but one of the things I know you stress is rapid iteration, the idea that we can develop and test very quickly new educational approaches. And I don't know if Danielle would be the best one to talk about this, Scotty, but can you say a little bit more about that process as you've been engaging with it, or as you hope to engage with it, as iteration of new educational approaches?
Yeah, so one of the key aspects of learning engineering is always thinking about the infrastructure at the beginning of a project, thinking about what's the data infrastructure, what's the infrastructure that you need to build in order to address, to answer your questions. And so key to rapid A/B experiments is having an infrastructure for that. So we've been working with another one of the digital learning platforms that was funded. There were 5 funded, called Terracotta. So if you just Google Terracotta, or if somebody could find that, type in that website for them. Terracotta is can be connected to Canvas. And so we have been working on the security review and getting Terracotta connected to the Canvas learning management system, such that this allows us to do the rapid A/B kinds of studies at the classroom level. And it will allow instructors also to conduct their own studies. It facilitates the ability to do consent such that instructors are not biased by who's consenting, who's not consenting, what condition they're in. It allows, it facilitates the ability to do the rapid A/B, so manipulating just very small things and versions of things. So without that, it would not be possible. Just we have to have a tool for that. So we're going to be investigating that tool and individuals' ability to use it. So usability studies on it, and then incorporating that within some of the studies we're doing next semester on that will investigate the impact of generative AI. So that's one answer is need a tool for that. And so that's why we've been working on building the infrastructure to build in Terracotta. Another answer has to do with more broad scale kinds of A/B studies that would be at the university level, not at the course level. So thinking about working with ET and other enterprises at ASU to think about how the kinds of things that might have an impact even on something like my ASU. So there has been some work by Ed Plus on building an app that sent out email messages. Unfortunately, it was kind of hard coded, and so we need something that is more parametered, that could be built into an AI or something that is just more usable. At the university level, we also have efforts by AT on building bots, so chatbots and various tools. And so if you think about the different roles at ASU, and we only have a very small amount of funding. And so in synergy with some of the things that ASU is working toward, we work with ET in thinking about the kinds of empirical studies that can be done, and ET's role and Ed Plus's role is on implementing them and also working on building the kinds of technologies that will be necessary. And so we're kind of a big team working together to investigate how to use those tools, how to build those tools. And so our expertise that we bring to the table is in, kind of the human factors and the usability and studying what their effects, and then connecting that, if you will, to the learning at scale database so that we can investigate the effects of those kinds of technologies and taking into consideration the broader picture. So instead of doing a study that is just with one classroom that says, what's the effect of this on this class, we can also look at the downstream effects next semester, this following semester, and also on other courses that the student might be in. So it just allows us to have a larger data set that gives a broader picture of what's going on.
That is really exciting, just listening to you speak about that. And so I just want to, two things. One, I think that especially with the learning enterprise picking up, because that is such a new domain that we really do not, we sort of have a sense of how academic programs work, whether they're good or not, or they're like truly efficient, that's a different issue. But learning engineering is such a, the learning enterprise space is such a new space that we really don't know who's coming in, what they're getting attracted to, how they're moving into micro courses, whatever they may be. it seems like there is a really that this is really a great place for growth for the learning engineering and the AB designs and so on, right? Because it's so brand new. The second thing, I just was smiling because when you said that, that this was an automated message that, EdPlus was sending. So I'm just dropping a link here. Rod, you might really enjoy this link when you get a moment later after the thing, about an automated message that ASU sends whenever somebody on your team is terminated. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, it really is like, so the piece is called "You Have Been Terminated, a Case for Humane Design." And so I wrote this a while back. This had been bothering me since day one. And
Yeah.
then, Claren, who used to work in, with Betty and me, she didn't get fired or anything. She left to do bigger, better things, becoming a K-12, high school teacher. And then you get this message saying this person's been terminated. It's like out of a movie. And it's, but I don't even know, like, these systems that we build have these inhuman faces, despite the fact that we as individuals are really caring and, what have you. So I really appreciate that thing that, that these can allow us to build better, more humane interactions with this behemoth that is ASU. You know what I mean? From UniSeat, from a student point of view. So thank you for that. I'm looking at the time here. So you've already mentioned this, but I want to sort of get on the record, sort of what are some ways that if there are faculty or doctoral students who are interested in becoming connected with the Learning Engineering Institute, or if you have any conferences or meetings and things that you're organizing, who should they get in touch with? Like, how can we build what we have already sort of started building, this partnership between MLFTC and the team that working with learning engineering. I'll let each of you sort of take a stab at it because I think you'll have slightly different perspectives on it. Let's start with Scotty.
There was a lot in that. I think we might want to jump around a little bit with it. As far as like, how to get involved with this. I mean, obviously, Danielle's already talked about our specific, leaps that we have ongoing. It is always possible to maybe get connected with a leap and become part of those teams. Now, we are also in the process of creating, this is for the students, especially the graduate students listening. We're in the process of creating a learning engineering graduate certificate. That is working through the system now. You should be able to actually get that certificate. Hopefully, it will probably be starting in fall of 25, unless something slows it down. But you should be able to get that learning engineering certificate along in parallel with your other degree. And hopefully we've set it up so there shouldn't be much of a hindrance there either. So it is a 15 credit hour degree where you learn about the learning engineering process, the basics of learning engineering, how we do it. You get exposure to research and projects in the learning engineering area. And you can take classes in some of the sub-disciplines that tend to lead into learning engineering. And we actually have several Meriwether Fulton classes listed as options. So that's the certificate, and it is a in-person certificate. We will eventually be setting it up and releasing it as a graduate certificate, online graduate certificate also. And anything you want to add, Danielle? Oh,
Danielle, cool.
Rod?
I think we've covered things like, looking at the data dictionary, getting involved with LEAPS, the certificate. I'm really glad you remembered that one, Scotty. I think one thing that's interesting is like the opportunity for creativity here. We talked about scale and like replication, but I think there's some really interesting opportunities here for replication, not just in that controlled, make everything the same way, but if someone had a really innovative intervention that they unveil in a math class. Well, what would it look like if we unveiled that in a chemistry class or in a writing course or a history course? So looking at replication across contexts where we actually really value those contextual differences. And I think one thing we can imagine is we have the data. Once you've figured out the data structure and the flags and the data pull you need, that makes it really easy for another instructor or another context to implement something and then pull that same data. they have the structure. It makes it really comparable across, I think, cases. And so I think the opportunity for replication and scale in different contexts is, I think, another creative application here. And so that's what I would encourage people to do is come to us with their questions and be ready to brainstorm and think about maybe there's a different way they could approach their research questions at a different scale or in different contexts.
So before Danielle, I give you the last word, I want to highlight that Juliana Carson is here. She leads our efforts at the college around grant getting and so on. So I'm really glad that she's here, because one of the things she does, she's always looking ahead, what grants are coming and so on, maps it to our faculty. And I think this is something that she can now add to her sort of little data bank and say, okay, where is the intersection with LEI for further collaboration? So thank you, Juliana, for that. And so, Danielle, last word before Betty closes us out for the session.
Well, I'll just mention that we're having the two events coming up. One is right around the corner. It's the Empowering Learners in AI. The next one is in March. We're having the Folk Fest. And so point that out on I believe it's the 14th and 15th. I don't want to get the dates wrong, but that will be announced very soon. That is a collaboration with the instructional design team, and it should be really great. And then linked to the IEEE group, Icicle, where we will be hosting the Learning Engineering Conference in July of next year. So be on the lookout for that as well. It will be in the Omni, so it won't be out traipsing around in the heat in July and at ASU.
And it's called Icicle, so that should cool people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We've got all sorts of jokes going around on that. Yeah.
And just to add, in the Folk Festival, we have Jennifer Werner from our college who's involved in sort of helping organize that. So again, just emphasizing the number of strands that we have connecting the two organizations together. So
yes.
Thank you again, both of you joining in, three of you, sorry, for joining in today. We will share the link on just in our website on the hub. And Betty, do you want to take us out with what's coming up
Thanks
next?
again. Yeah, we'll post some of this information also with the show notes when we post the recording of the video. And just a reminder, no, just an hour next week. It's Thanksgiving break, so happy Thanksgiving in advance to everyone. And we'll have our last just an hour the following week on December 1st. So we hope to see you all then. We'll be debriefing on a semester of teaching with AI. So it should be a great discussion. So thanks again, folks, and have a great afternoon. Thanks again to our guests.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Thanks
you
for having us.
Yes.
Thank you.